In the year 750, the Islamic world was not witnessing an ordinary political change. It was witnessing the end of an age. For decades, the Umayyads had ruled from Damascus over a vast world, stretching from the borders of India to North Africa, and from the heart of Syria to the shores of the Atlantic. But now, that power was collapsing. A new force had risen in the east, the Abbasids. They came with the promise of change, with black banners, strong supporters, and a deep desire to remove the Umayyads from power forever. The Umayyad Caliphate fell. Damascus, once the center of one of the most powerful dynasties in the world, was no longer safe for the family that had ruled from it. The sons of the Umayyad house were hunted. Some were killed. Some disappeared. Some tried to hide. And in the middle of this storm, there was a young Umayyad prince whose life was about to change forever. His name was Abd Al Rahman ibn Muawiyah. At that moment, he was not a ruler. He was not a founder. He was not yet the man history would remember. He was simply a young survivor, running from death. But from the ashes of a destroyed dynasty, this young prince would travel west, cross deserts and seas, enter al-Andalus, and rebuild the Umayyad name far from Damascus. History would remember him as Abd Al Rahman Al Dakhil, the man who entered al-Andalus, the survivor who rebuilt the Umayyads in the west. Abd Al Rahman was born into a house of power. To belong to the Umayyad family once meant protection, prestige, and proximity to the center of the Islamic world. But after the Abbasid revolution, that same name became a death sentence. Being an Umayyad was no longer a privilege, it was a danger. Every member of the family became a possible target. Every road became unsafe. Every stranger could be an informer. Every delay could mean capture. Abd Al Rahman was still young when he saw the world he knew collapse around him. The palaces, the guards, the authority, the confidence of a ruling family, all of it vanished. The question was no longer who would rule. The question was who would survive. Historical reports describe a violent and terrifying period in which many members of the Umayyad family were killed after the Abbasids took power. Abd Al Rahman escaped that fate. But survival came at a terrible price. He lost his security. He lost his homeland. He lost the protection of his dynasty. And he had to begin a journey with no guarantee that he would reach the next day alive. He could not move like a prince. He had to move like a fugitive. He could not trust easily. He could not stay in one place for long. The name that once opened doors for him now placed him in danger. And so, Abd Al Rahman began one of the most extraordinary escapes in medieval history. He was not yet building a state. He was trying to stay alive. Abd Al Rahman fled westward. Behind him was the fall of the Umayyads. Ahead of him was uncertainty. The road was long, dangerous, and full of fear. This was not the journey of a prince traveling with honor and ceremony. It was the journey of a man being hunted because of his bloodline, his name, and what he represented. He moved through difficult lands, avoided the eyes of enemies, and depended on the loyalty of a small number of people who remained close to him. Every step carried risk. Every shelter was temporary. Every face could hide danger. He was escaping not only a new political power, but a decision that the Umayyad family should disappear from history. But Abd Al Rahman did not disappear. He kept moving. From Syria, the road eventually led him toward North Africa. And with every mile, the young prince carried something more powerful than wealth or soldiers. He carried memory, the memory of Damascus, the memory of his fallen family, the memory of a dynasty that had ruled the Islamic world. But memory alone was not enough. If he wanted to survive, he needed patience. If he wanted to rise again, he needed intelligence. And if he wanted to turn exile into power, he needed to find a land where the Umayyad name still meant something. That land would be al-Andalus. But before reaching it, Abd Al Rahman had to survive the hard world of exile. North Africa became one of the most important stages in Abd Al Rahman's story. His mother was of Berber origin, and this connection mattered. In a time when bloodlines, tribal ties, and local alliances could decide life or death, this background helped him find possible protection in the Maghreb. He was not entering a completely foreign world. He was entering a region where he could hope to find people who might shelter him, guide him, or at least refuse to hand him over to his enemies. But even there he could not be careless. He was still a hunted Umayyad. He could not announce himself openly without danger. He could not remain hidden forever without losing every chance of a future. So he waited, he watched, he listened. He tried to understand the balance of power around him. Who could be trusted? Who might betray him? Where was the opportunity? During this period, reports from al-Andalus began to matter more and more. Al-Andalus was far away in the western edge of the Islamic world. It was rich, it was important, but it was also divided. Its political situation was unstable, and some groups there still looked with sympathy toward the Umayyad name. For Abd Al Rahman, this distant land slowly changed in meaning. At first it may have seemed like a place of refuge. Then it became something more, a possibility, a future, maybe even a new beginning. When Abd Al Rahman looked toward Al-Andalus, he was not looking at an empty land. The Muslim conquest of Iberia had already taken place decades earlier through the campaigns associated with Tariq ibn Ziyad and Musa ibn Nusayr. Al-Andalus was already part of the Islamic world, but it was not politically calm. The land was full of rivalries. Arab tribal tensions remained strong. The relationship between Arab and Berber groups was often difficult. Local commanders and political factions competed for influence, and the authority of the governor did not rest on a deep and united political foundation. The strongest man in Al-Andalus at that time was Yusuf al-Fihri. He held power, but he did not command universal loyalty. His rule existed in a world of divisions, ambitions, and unstable alliances. This was exactly the kind of environment where a skilled political figure could rise. Abd Al Rahman understood something important. A famous name alone would not be enough. The Umayyad name could open doors, but it could not win power by itself. To succeed in Al-Andalus, he needed supporters. He needed patience. He needed to understand local divisions, and he needed to turn the memory of the Umayyads into a living political project. He was not coming to conquer Al-Andalus from the outside. He was coming to claim a future inside a land that was already searching for order. Abd Al Rahman did not enter Al-Andalus with a massive army. He did not arrive as a conqueror at the head of an unstoppable force. He arrived with something far more fragile, and in some ways far more dangerous. He arrived with a name, the Umayyad name, a name that had been crushed in the east, but not forgotten in the west. Before crossing, he had already begun testing the political ground. Messengers and supporters helped explore whether people in Al-Andalus would accept him, support him, or reject him. He needed to know if the land was ready. Then, in 755, Abd Al Rahman crossed into Al-Andalus. In appearance, it may have looked like a small arrival, a fugitive prince reaching the western edge of the Islamic world. But in history, it was a turning point. Because from that moment, Abd Al Rahman was no longer only escaping the past, he was moving toward power. He had crossed from survival into ambition, from exile into action, from being hunted to becoming a challenger. The man who had fled the collapse of the Umayyads in the east had now entered the land where he would rebuild them in the west. After arriving in Al-Andalus, Abd Al Rahman did not waste time in empty declarations. He began to work carefully. He understood that power is not built by emotion alone. It requires loyalty, organization, timing, and the ability to bring different groups together under one cause. Some people supported him because of his Umayyad bloodline. Others saw in him a chance to weaken Yusuf al-Fihri. Some believed he could restore political balance. Others saw opportunity. But Abd Al Rahman's success was not based only on his ancestry. It was also based on his character. He was patient, cautious, determined. He knew when to show gentleness and when to show firmness. He knew that a man who had lost everything could not afford reckless mistakes. Slowly, a new political camp formed around him. At first, it was not overwhelming in size, but it carried great meaning. Because every new supporter proved that the Umayyad name was not dead. Every alliance made him less of a fugitive and more of a claimant. Every step brought him closer to the center of power. The hunted prince was becoming a political force, and that meant a confrontation with Yusuf al-Fihri was unavoidable.
Yusuf al-Fihri was not going to surrender al-Andalus to an Umayyad newcomer. He was the established power. Abd Al Rahman was the outsider. The conflict between them was inevitable. In 756, the decisive confrontation came near Cordoba, at a place often associated with the Battle of Al-Musara. This was not only a struggle between two men, it was a struggle over the future direction of Al-Andalus. Would the land remain under the old balance of local power, or would it become the center of a new Umayyad state? For Abd Al Rahman, the battle was more than military. It was the test of his entire journey. Could a fugitive prince defeat a ruler already established in the land? Could a man who had lost Damascus take Córdoba? Could a survivor become a founder? The answer came on the battlefield. Abd Al Rahman won. Yusuf al-Fihri was defeated and forced to retreat. The gates of Córdoba opened before the Umayyad survivor. And with that victory, Abd Al Rahman was transformed. He was no longer simply a political refugee. He was no longer only the last hope of a fallen house. He was now the ruler of a new reality in Al-Andalus. The Umayyads had fallen in the east, but in the west, they had risen again. Entering Cordoba was not the end of the story. It was the beginning of the harder part. Winning a battle is one thing, building a stable state is something else. Abd Al Rahman now had to turn victory into authority. He had to control rivals, suppress rebellions, reward supporters, build institutions, and convince the people of Al-Andalus that his rule was not a temporary accident, but the beginning of a lasting political order. He founded the independent Umayyad Emirate of Cordoba. This was not simply nostalgia for Damascus. It was not a copy of the old world. It was a new Umayyad state, built in the far west, shaped by the conditions of Al-Andalus, and independent from Abbasid authority in the east. Abd Al Rahman understood that survival was not enough. If his project was going to last, it needed structure. It needed military strength. It needed political discipline. It needed a capital. Cordoba became that center. From there, he began to lay the foundations for a state that would outlive him and eventually become one of the most brilliant centers of medieval civilization. The fugitive had become an emir, the exile had become a founder, and Al-Andalus had entered a new chapter. But Abd Al Rahman's victory did not make his world safe. The new emirate faced internal enemies. Rebellions continued. Old rivals remained dangerous. Local ambitions did not disappear overnight. And far away in the east, the Abbasids had no reason to welcome the rise of an Umayyad survivor in Al-Andalus. To them, Abd Al Rahman represented something dangerous. He was proof that the Umayyads had not been completely erased. He was a living reminder that dynasties can fall in one land and rise again in another. So Abd Al Rahman had to defend his rule again and again. He showed that he was not only a man of escape, he was a man of government. He knew when to fight, when to negotiate, when to wait, and when to act with force. Over time, what had once seemed like a desperate adventure became a stable political reality. The Umayyad Emirate of Cordoba endured. A famous later story says that the Abbasid Caliph Abu Ja'far al-Mansur admired Abd al Rahman's achievement and called him the Falcon of Quraysh. Whether the exact wording is taken as legitimate or legendary, the meaning is clear. Even his enemies understood that this man was extraordinary. He had escaped destruction, crossed the world, defeated his rivals, and built a state where no one expected him to survive. Abd Al Rahman Al Dakhil
ruled al-Andalus for decades, and by the time his life ended, he had done far more than survive. He had founded a dynasty in the west. He had created a political center in Córdoba. He had restored the Umayyad name after its destruction in the east, and he had planted the seeds of a civilization that would later shine across medieval Europe and the Islamic world. One of the most important symbols of that legacy was the beginning of the Great Mosque of Córdoba, a monument that would later become one of the most famous landmarks of al-Andalus. But Abd Al Rahman's greatness does not come only from buildings or battles. It comes from what he did with loss. He lost his homeland. He lost his security. He saw his dynasty destroyed. He became a fugitive. But he refused to let the fall of his family become the end of his story. Instead, he turned exile into strategy, survival into power, memory into legitimacy, and defeat into a new beginning. That is why Abd Al Rahman Al Dakhil is remembered not simply as a ruler, but as one of the most remarkable founders in Islamic history. He was the prince who escaped death, the exile who crossed into al-Andalus, the survivor who rebuilt the Umayyads, and the man who proved that sometimes history does not end with the fall of a dynasty. Sometimes it begins again with the one person who refuses to disappear. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and join us as we uncover more lives that changed history. And tell us in the comments, who should we cover next?